Sew Like a Pro, how to make a man's necktie. Whether you want to do it to pick up a new hobby, or whether you want to just try it, or just for a gift, whatever the case may be. What you want to do is, I went and bought a necktie from the resale store, because the most difficult part is to cut the gut or the inside of the tie perfect. You can buy this by the yard. You could buy them already pre-cut. So I'm using a Dubioni silk. Usually it's just a lightweight silk or China silk or whatever kind of pattern you like, a brocade. Sometimes you can find vintage tie fabrics. But I'm using the Dubioni silk. It's iridescent. It's woven together with these two different colors, this gold and this turquoisey kind of color. Is really beautiful. So what you want to do is be very careful to watch the way you pick it apart. And then I pressed it flat, and I'm going to use the tie itself as my pattern. Now a tie is cut on the bias. Now we talked about grain lines before. This is a crosswise, second strongest. The lengthwise is the strongest, the least amount of stretch, and then the bias. It has the greatest amount of stretch, because a tie is wrapped around the gut or the inner lining, and you don't want any ripples along the side. So that's why we cut it on the bias. So you can see that this is laid out on the bias. So I would cut this on my bias, cut one, and you can see it's a seam where it's joined together. Let's try and just have 2 seams instead of 3. This happens to have 3. So I cut one like that, and then I took the other end, and then I cut out another one, and you can see where I joined the 2 together. The reason this seam is on an angle, so that when we take these and wrap it around the gut, that these 2 seams never meet, and we don't create any extra bulk or a big fat lump in a spot. So this is how I want to match up my corner. So we want to be careful to watch the way the manufacturer put it together, so we can stitch it together the same way. So this, I picked off this corner. So then I used that as my pattern, and I cut out my new lining. I took this one and I folded in half, so I can make sure they were identical. And if it was off, I cut it and cleaned it back up and made it true. And I cut mine out. So here, to make sure that you're going to get this to roll over, if I bring this up like a half and a half, and I take this and press it down with my finger so it comes to a true point, I can pin it and see that that's going to be my front point. We want a true point, and then we're just going to stitch this at that angle. You can either press it with them or with your finger, press it on your arm, whichever you prefer. And I'm going to stitch only half of it, and then I'm going to take this, flip it right side out, and then I'm going to match this and stitch this corner, make it intersect, leave the needle down, stitch it, and stitch this corner around. So let's go ahead and do that on the machine. Or you can mark it with your pen, whatever, your marking pen, your sewing marking pen. So we're really just going halfway up there. It's really a small seam. Be careful not to do more than what you need.
What kind of needle should you use?
And you want to use a fine needle, like a size 9 or 11, because you don't want to puncture the silk. And this is a regular thread. It's a cotton wrap polyester. It's dual plus all purpose. That's the type of thread you want to use. So my lining on my tie is also, it's just a polyester. So let's look, this is what I want to do. I want to go up to this very point where my thread ended at. Here's my, so I know I'm going to start my needle right there. So take your time. So it's just a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to line these up together. And if it don't come out perfect, let it just make an adjustment. The two fabrics don't stretch the same. So see, this one don't want to go all the way to the end, and I don't want to pull it, so I'm going to just take this and let it lay out flat. Look at that. Let's make an adjustment along the way, and then I'm going to just stitch this to the end. And then this one is pinned. I see what happened with the other side. Let's do the same thing. Let's just sew it just the way it wants to fall, because the fabrics don't necessarily work the same, because they are not the same. So I'm going to stitch right up to that pin. Don't go past there. Sometimes just take the hand wheel and walk it right up to where you want it to stop at, where you want to stitch at. So you don't have to pick the stitches out. So let's clean the threads. Always clean the thread as you go. So this what happens. I'm going to take this and turn right side out. We're not going to trim it. And push it out. And there's my point of my tie. The line in the corners. But this is pushed back so the lining don't show on the edge. Then you want to take the insert and push it up to the very corner. So this is what I like to do. Grab it like that, hold it together, take my thumb and hold it in place and push it right up to that very corner. And we don't press it until you finish it. And this is the trick. So I have this lined up. I want to find the very center. I want to pin this so this corner will stay pushed up to the very tip. Pin it in place. And be careful to use the right pin, some silk pins, so you don't damage your fabric. So I'm going to take this and pin it right up the center. I want these distances to be equal. I'll do this throughout the entire tie, and then I'll take this and fold it over, because the tie liner itself is my guide. Pull that out, pin it. Now I'm going to just try and pin it to the liner itself. Then I take this one and do exactly the same. That's my guide. Fold right along my guide. And I'm going to take this and fold like a 1/2 inch back. Pin it in place. And this is what I'm going to check. I'm going to check if I get to this point to fold these over, because I may have to make an adjustment, and make sure that they coming out the same. So if this is shifting, this is off, I want to stop, go back, and make sure everything is lined up exactly the same on both sides. I don't want my tie looking crooked. So here we go. Match these up. Make sure they're coming out the same. Let's line this up. Put it in place. Pin it in place. Before we get started. There we go. Perfect. And then continue to pin all the way down, just like I was showing you before. Make sure everything is centered. And then you're going to do a slip stitch. So after you have all this pinned in place, I'm going to start at the very beginning. We have this turned under. Fold back a 1/2 inch. Pin the entire thing down. Make sure it's very neat and clean. And you can see that it's the insert that shapes the tie. So I don't want this video to run too long. I want you to use a single thread. Use beeswax. If you take it and run it across on the wax, it'll coat the thread and will stop the thread from knotting up on you while you're sewing. So you buy beeswax This is already one, but it still works. And coat the thread with the wax, and it'll stop it from knotting up on you while you're sewing. So I'm going to take this and slip it in through the back so you don't see my knot. And the slip stitch is simply going from one side. Where I come out, that's where I'm going to go in on the other side. So where I come out, that's where I'm going to go in on the other side. So it's a slow process. You don't have anything to do. Sit down and make a nice tie.
Are all ties hand
All ties are hand sewn. Because we don't want the stitches to go through to the liner. We just want the stitches to, it can catch the liner, but we don't want to see the stitches on the front. All ties are hand sewn. You don't have to do the stitches as small as I am. You can run them long as you like, but you don't want it to come apart. But all ties are handmade. So I'm going to flip it over a little bit so you can see what it's going to look like. So, and after you finish it, then you want to press it. Look at that. That's going to be a beautiful tie. Dubioni silk. It probably costs $10 a yard. You need at least 3/4 to 7/8 of a yard, and you can make 2 neckties. And the liner, the resale tie, cost me less than $2. And I really bought it just so I can get the gut. And that's how you make a man's necktie.